thing, I told Rose not even bother to be here tonight, just because we didn't have a
Quorum?
full quorum and people gotta leave. Let's not just try to rush it, and we can do it tomorrow morning, hopefully, if everything works out
Tomorrow
tonight.
morning, are we meeting tomorrow morning?
What's tomorrow morning? Yeah,
No.
council, or
No.
tomorrow morning,
Evening.
tomorrow evening, yeah, whatever.
You'll be here tomorrow morning running a meeting, but you will definitely have no.
Anyway,
No
with all
quorum.
that said, it's been a long,
Yes, sir. I say you'll have no quorum in the morning.
So I guess, I'll start this out as I've had in the past a little bit, but originally we're looking at a 0.75 3/4% increase in taxes. Water deal came on board, for a possible eliminate the tax increase. All of us aren't comfortable with that at this point due to the fact that we just want more information. What is long-term? What is the implications if we were to do a deal like that? After we didn't agree with the water deal at this point, the tax increase raised to a 1.5%, twice as much. So since it raised to 1.5%, I think all of my colleagues have experienced, and even other people, numerous phone calls, emails, regarding why it went up an extra 0.75%, which,
Do you want me to answer that, or do you?
go ahead.
Okay. The reason it went up the extra 0.5% is after the original budget was prepared the first week in November, we realized that the actuarial assumptions that we were using for the pension plans could be changed so that we can raise the special levy tax equal to everybody. The original budget was proposed to had the income tax, the total income tax rate for city residents at 1.65, but we were only gonna raise the tax for non-city residents at that point in time to 1.5. We made a decision after talking to our actuary and working on, the mathematical calculations with that ability to tax and what the MMO would be at different rates. We decided that to go all the way and make it equal for city residents and non-city residents in their income tax rate, we would change the actuarial assumptions so that that investment rate of return would be 6%. Noticing in, the book is originally prepared versus the 4-page handout that went out a couple days or a week later, the MMO itself went up. So we have to cover that MMO by lowering the actuarial assumptions. And because there's 2 or 3 moving parts here. There's the pension itself, there's the income taxes that go along with it, and then part of the income taxes are actually the special levy.
Which I think everybody is in agreement that we definitely want the special levy to be assessed to the non-residents that are working in the city, as well as,
Yes,
as well
Yeah,
as
the
like
same
it's
equal-
been with the people who do live in the city.
equal for everybody. So that, because of those 2 or 3 changes within the budget book, that changed.
But that's what's put us in hot water like you wouldn't believe. To the
Okay.
extent that, and I guess my next question would be, what does 0.75% equal in dollars?
Cuts.
Roughly about $1.3 million. Short of 2 million, more than 1.5 million. Right now, a mill is 3,100,000. I mean, I'm totally rounding. It's in the handout book. It's $3,108,000 and some change. So we normally only collect about 90% of that. So if we were to
So, 0.75 you're saying is about 1.3 mil?
yeah.
I just wanted to say, yes, we have gotten pushback on the tax increase, but I also have heard from people thanking us for holding off on the water thing. So haven't done a thing say this many X, this many X. And the people who are castigating us for the tax increase are going off in a million different directions. They're blaming us for the school district tax, which isn't fair. There was one email today from a person who called us you people, which always makes me say, do I really want to finish reading this after somebody addresses me as you people? Ended up criticizing immigrants, criticizing the position of, that Meekin has.
The liaison.
Ended up saying that, why are we trying to educate, and I can't remember, I will look it up, the word that she used for children in public schools. And then there was another email from somebody with the same point saying, if you are sending your kids to public schools, you should be able to pay to educate them. In other words, I don't have any kids in the school, so I don't want to pay the school tax. And if you can't afford to educate your kids, why are they going to school? To me, if that's somebody's attitude, the way they look
Yeah,
at
you want to raise
fiscal,
their taxes. I know what you're
no,
saying.
the way that somebody looks at fiscal challenges, and it's not so much saying to them, well, you know what,
They
school
didn't do
tax
their
is
homework.
separate from ours, and the school tax is more expensive than ours, but I think if you look at the school district and the city, both grappling with, long-term challenges in terms of, what our finances are. With, what we've had is an eroding tax base, even though I opposed, parts of the alert, I didn't think it should be 100% for the Bayfront. There have been attempts, put forth by this administration to figure out how are we going to, fix this long-term. So anyhow, I just wanted to say though, I did get,
The term wasn't a good one. We can't repeat it on
okay.
here.
Yeah, it was awful, wasn't it, Kes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So-
and go ahead.
No, but I have heard from people, probably, I went to the Indiana basketball women's game today, and somebody stopped me and said, thank you. So just so you know, I think the people who may be crediting us with asking some critical thinking questions are not maybe as vocal either as the people who say, why are you doing it? Yeah, I can't afford this, blah, blah, blah. And we pay taxes too, so we know it's gonna be a challenge.
Outside of this, I've had very, very little, very little dialogue. I haven't had many complaints outside of here. No phone calls. A couple that talked to me, like at Breakfast Place or someplace where I was, once you explained them what we were doing, they were okay. When you explain them, you want to make cuts, has to be in police and fire or something. If that's what you want, we can do
Well,
it.
that's,
Okay, bye.
If I had a problem, it was with one of the mayor's appointments to his managerial board or his, I thought that letter was kind of demeaning. The guy came up with all kinds of solutions to things we can't do. And if this guy's on the mayor's council, I'm really disappointed because he's suggesting things that are out of our realm. If he knew anything about government and ordinances, this is not a business, this is a government. We cannot just go out and tax the nonprofits. We can't go out and tell Mill Creek we're gonna levy a tax on them. If you read that letter,
Oh, I don't-
I found
Yeah,
that
we all
silly.
read
I
that.
mean, come on, don't even, that guy shouldn't even be on the board, okay? And then to insult my intelligence, I don't know what his degree's in, mine's in accounting. And to write the kind of crap he did, I find it to me, most of the people, they don't understand when you tell them that we can't do this, we can't do that. This is why tomorrow night, I'm hoping for your support. I put a couple amendments on, and one of them is gonna be, I talked to Liz earlier, I tried to contact a couple of you, but I'm putting on an ordinance, a request tomorrow that Attorney Betts research the legality and the, the implementation of a public safety fee. Because I've heard, I've heard the chief of fire talk about it. We've talked about it for years. We've talked about the League of Cities. Nobody knows if we can or can't. I say it's time we find out. And if it's done right, we can subtract from the general budget and assess it as a fee. Because as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, tax exempts have to pay fees, but not taxes.
correct.
So if we want, we have to do the old end game, just like you saw on TV last night. how people go around the law to sell things, that's what we have to do. So if we can't beat them at their game, we're gonna have to, you know, we have to find a way to, everybody will have to pay the fee, but I think it'll be a lot easier if that pain is spread out over a larger base. So that's my suggestion.
But
And-
that wouldn't be for 2020.
no, but
that would
it's,
be-
it's what I said to the mayor the other day. We have to start changing the culture of how we do things around here.
We can enact that at any point.
Sure, and it would be effective.
You know, it could.
Oh, okay.
you
It
know,
just
we
won't be
could
in this budget.
Say effective
Okay.
April 1st, 2020, there's going to be a.
It would be a nice present if we could do it. And I think we have to start looking at that. We have to change the culture around it. We just can't say, we're looking for one-time money and it's coming in. We have to change the whole culture, how we do
So you
business.
know what's coming in
Yeah.
year after year.
And we start doing things that don't add to our debt unnecessarily, that we start collecting all the revenue around here that we should be, and we're not. And I pointed that out, and I'll be glad to point it out again. And we have to start changing how we approach things around here. Everybody's gotta be thankful they got a job, do their job, do it right, do it in the most efficient way. I used to joke, I return money year after year in my department, and so is the controller this year. If everybody does that and looks for ways to help us, things are gonna get a lot better around here. It's not gonna change overnight, and like Paul and I always argue about, you know, nickels and dimes add up after a while. Every dollar starts to count. When you're where we are, we're not out of the woods yet. This growth that they talk about is 20 or 30 years down the line yet, till we see the real benefits of it. But like I say, I haven't had that many complaints. I think people, they don't want their taxes increased.
I
And
don't
said
want
to
mine
them,
either.
it's
We
either-
don't.
It's either this year or next year. You know, somewhere down the
Well,
line, you know, we're,
Kicker is, it's probably gonna be this year and next year.
right. But I think if we start changing the culture around here, I think things can start turning around. Nobody wants to hear that, but I've seen 50 years of it. At least.
I think we should consider assessing the golf course as well and see what can be done along that way.
What?
Make an evaluation of the water authority, why not evaluate the golf course?
I think Kathy, it's a good idea. You wanna be careful about one thing. I wouldn't mind leasing it, but handing land over to Harbor Creek, I mentioned that to one of their supervisors, and his eyes lit up. And he was counting 50, 60 houses. Or a nice development on there. We have to be careful
Well, we do have that in the recommendations from PFM.
to lease
Then
it.
Ed, can you, no, the valuation, right?
Yeah.
Didn't you say that it would be boom, 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 or was it Gordon Mann who said the next valuations? I mean, there were a number of assets that he
Yeah,
recommended
he
be,
looked
get
at,
valuation.
he was looking at, with the golf course, they talked about two things, one, assessing the value and also looking at profitability. But the two was the parking authority, and the water authority. Along with the golf course, I think you can, and so what you're, I think what you're talking about is if you're gonna do an appraisal of any asset, you can request funding from the state to pay
Right,
for
that's-
that.
yeah.
And you would probably wanna package some of them together, so you might have someone do a water appraisal, a sewer appraisal, parking authority, and golf course. I don't know if one entity would do four, but that would be something that would be subject to being paid for by federal, or by state grants.
And even though I was really vocal about the golf course for the last year, and even up through this year, that was one of the things that I guess gave me confidence that it is on the table to be done, so.
I don't think it hurts to have valuations. You should know what it's worth.
Should know what our
And
assets
make it profitable
Yeah.
too, so.
Right.
I mean, we have an idea, but we don't have an accurate idea.
Well, it hadn't been done in several years, it's, right?
12,
2012?
no, 12 years ago.
12 years ago.
07.
07?
I mean, outside of a golf course, that land is a gold mine out in Harbor Creek. Even if it wasn't a golf course. I know what they'd use it for.
I guess at this point, I mean, and I don't know if the council has the appetite that I have for the extent of what we can do to get this back down to our preliminary budget that stated a 0.75% tax increase.
I don't think we got that much kickback when that first came out.
No, we didn't. And I know, and maybe as council president, I heard more between, and I don't wanna sound like you, Kaz, when I was out, I got beat up a little bit, and you have to explain it, and that doesn't mean you sold everyone.
Yeah.
And I did get the phone calls, the emails on both my city phone, my own phone, and,
Well, as president,
I
you will
think,
get that.
I honestly believe, we do our due diligence, get it back to the preliminary budget where it's a 0.75% increase and not a 1.5, because they went in with a 3/4, we came out with twice as much,
Yeah,
on
but-
top of your garbage
But
and,
let me throw this out there, and I'm not really, I'm just trying to be like,
Voice of reason?
not even voice of reason, because I think we're all reasonable. Well, maybe not you, but
I
seriously.
like that, Chris, I like it.
I think what the 0.75 represented something that's not on the table anymore. And so we have to be careful to not allow respectfully public opinion of people who don't have privilege to the information we have.
But
These
I-
people who are complaining, and rightfully so, whether you, and I will tell you, whether you own your house or you rent, if taxes go up and when taxes go up, your payment goes up every month. And never done that. So I think it affects all of us on this board, everyone in this room, everyone at this table. If we're going, I don't know if we can get back to 0.75 and still make all these actuarial changes that we also want to make. I don't think that's 0.75 is on the table anymore without lessening or changing or going back to the original proposed budget, which is our actuarial tables where they were before we had the decision to make them different, which was what, 6% rate of return, and the mortality tables being moved up to more appropriate timelines for where we are. So I think it's, and I don't know, I'm just saying, what I remember in my head is that
so we took a jump from, we were at 8% was our table, and we went down to 6. We did have, what was it, a 7.25 in play there.
Can I ask this question and again? I'm promoting what makes sense in my head, which may not be what makes sense in the rest of the world. But if we're going to do it, to your point, Mr. President, if we raise taxes this year at a lesser amount, we're probably gonna have to raise them again next year or sometime in the very near future, or if we don't raise them this year, we're definitely gonna have to raise them in the next year or two. Does it make sense to rip the scab off and do it now? Because we're doing it for the right reason. You know what I mean? I don't know, because, again,
There's
you
your,
understand what I'm saying? Like,
not to
that's-
interrupt Curtis, but I mean, there's the 7.25 in the actuarial assumption, and 7.75 mils were 1.7 million short.
Or 1 million.
I don't have the financial background. I view it as just as a very basic, kind of regular guy approach. There's 3 problems, as I see it. You got a pension problem where you expect people to be passing away in their 60s, and you expect to make 8% every year on your money. And so when you have a good year and you make 7.5%, you're falling further behind. And so this proposal fixes the pension problem. It carries with it some other side effects, but it fixes prong number 1. Prong number 2 is we spend more than we make. That is going to require some cuts or tightening of the belt, to say the least, because your expenses are gonna continue to go up and your taxes are gonna have to go up to meet that. But still, right now, you're spending more than you make. That's a problem. Now, part of that expense is the third problem. You have massive debt. And so you have to figure out a way to get that debt down. And so this fixes, if we just go back, this fixes, it's a long-term fix, but it fixes your pension problem. It comes with it a sticker price up front that you've gotta pay for. And you're spending more than you make right now. So that's where the struggle comes. You know, it's a tax increase or it's finding money from some other source. I don't know that you have an opportunity to make cuts to meet that, because you already have to make cuts over the next 5 years to just not spend more than you make.
And putting these things in perspective, and again, I feel like I'm championing some humongous tax increase. But I am hopefully championing the thought process that we have not had a tax increase, property tax increase since 2015. That's significant, because you can't probably find very many other areas of your life over the last almost 5 years, where from milk to bread, to keep it really basic, from milk to bread to gas, where there has not been some increase since 2015. Let's just keep it honest. The other thing is too, to your point, Ed, Mr. Betts, is that changing the actuarial tables and the rate of return, the percentage from 8 to 6, and all of those adjustments, they do come with a price. The interesting thing, at least the way I see it, with the $90 million or the upfront lease payment, whatever it is, it doesn't solve the annual deficit that we're talking about. It solves it for this year, and it becomes, in my opinion, two things. One, it helps pay down our debt. Wonderful. Two, though, on the negative side, it becomes a one-time fix again that doesn't answer the budget deficit problem moving forward. And you're shaking your head, but what am I saying wrong?
We're saving 90 million in interest, and we're reducing our debt payments from 9.2 million to 2.8 million. Which carries through every year.
So why is it that with or without the lease payment being received or utilized, do our annual budget still have a deficit?
Because we're still spending more than we're making. We still have to, and we're working on other things to attack that.
Right.
But remember, PFM identified all three problems: the debt, the deficit, and the pension.
So we're
We
spending
can't
more
fix
than
everything in 1 year.
So we're spending more money than we're making, but yet one of the only ways, regrettably, is property tax. That's one way that we generate revenue as a municipality. So my point is, do we not do a tax increase that's significant enough to make a difference because we think other things are going to work, or we don't want people to say, well, why would you raise taxes that much? Because honestly, most people that are complaining about those things have no idea what we know based on these budget books. They haven't sat in these conversations. They haven't sat and looked at numbers. They just know they don't want their taxes increased. Period, point blank. And none of us do. My only thing is, how else do we generate revenue right now that's going to help us to not spend more than what we are bringing in?
I think there also are people who have done the math, judging by at least one letter to the editor, the math that you did, the math that Kaz did, on the actual lease and what we're giving up in terms of the 10 additional years. And we would be doing that without having a value on the water system. So I was never like, upfront lease is bad, just bad, let's not do it. I want to have the facts on how much the system is worth. There was a letter that said, and Jim, you brought it up because you did the math and you said, okay, well, if we extended 10 years, we're doing this at this.
For 10 million, not 40 million. On the average of 4 million a year.
Right, so the people who are itching to say, well, go, hurry up. I think it was somebody in one of those emails, or maybe it was a phone call, said, and you think you know more than the financial consultant? Why aren't you paying attention to that was a mean
That was
voicemail. It might have been the same person.
Yeah.
Was that somebody who also called us you people? But I want to know what it's worth. And the fact, for the last week and a half, I've really struggled to get everything straight about how this, and I thank Ed Betza and Kathy Rosdick and Paul for, trying to lay out how this sequence happened, but you started off by saying we're still uncomfortable with this, but I'm more comfortable that in 2020, at some point, we will hopefully get some money to be able to do those valuations. Then we'll be able to say, okay, the water authority really can't afford to buy itself because it has too much debt or not, but at least we'll know what we're talking about.
Well, free of government, if they were on their own, they would be free of our shackles. There's no, they could do whatever they wanted to do. I think they're out of the PUC now, right, Ed?
Yeah, I mean.
So I mean, if they were on their own without government oversight, we sold it.
To the authority.
If the authority bought it and ceased to exist as an authority, that's what they would happen, right? If we sold it?
They wouldn't be an authority anymore.
Not,
No, they'd be free to do whatever they want.
some,
No, they
No,
would
it
fall
would be an
under
authority,
PUC
they
then.
would own it, they would be an owner.
Authority? What, under what, yeah, but without, who authorized them?
They would fall under the PUC.
Well, we're
then.
selling it though, aren't we, Ed? If we're selling it, we're divorcing ourselves
No.
from ownership, aren't we?
Well, if it's still an authority.
Selling it, you're selling it.
Yeah,
Todd.
we sold it, I said.
Let's, couple different things.
Okay.
One, if you were to pre-fund the lease.
I'm
they
not talking
prepay-
about that.
Just bear with me, there's
Okay.
only three options, I'll do all of them.
Okay.
If they prepay the lease, everything stays the same.
Correct.
The yearly payments stop and you get a lump sum. If it's good, do it, if it's not, don't. The second option would be to sell it to the water authority. If you sell it to the water authority, nothing would change, except they would be the owner. We would not be the owner. You would still be appointing the members.
I thought we weren't. According to them, that we would not have, did you understand it?
no, I did understand it the way, at least the way Paul.
That would
yes,
be the,
that's way.
because he,
I mean,
articulated that would be the
they only
uniqueness
exist
of, or
because
the
you
benefit
created
of
them.
keeping it with the authority. Is that we still
So
have folks.
they don't
Yeah,
ever,
so
they
point.
can't exist without the city. There's no existence.
Yeah, but if we
outside.
sold it to them, Ed, wouldn't that,
They would just be the owner of it.
they wouldn't be a
pay us
private
for the
company?
lease.
They would not be private.
What if they go
only exist
bankrupt?
because of
What if
you.
they go bankrupt? Who owns it then?
We do.
You do, but you also take with it the debt.
They're on our cap rate. That means we're responsible.
They don't go bankrupt because you always have taxing authority.
If we go bankrupt, everybody goes bankrupt.
That's right. The third option would be to sell it to a private entity. The private entity would be devoid of us completely. It would be sold, they now own it, they operate it. They would set their fees and their rates, subject to PUC approval.
I'm gonna ask, could there be a fourth option? I'm not suggesting this, but could there be a fourth option where a private entity would lease it?
I was gonna do that, but I thought that would come, but since you do,
Complicated.
Again, not
the private
advocating.
entity would be an operator. We would retain ownership. It would not be subject to PUC. Well, it might be,
Okay.
depending on what the agreement was. If we're setting the rates, no. If they're setting the rates, yes.
But the way, would the water authority, if it owned it, would it be akin to the port authority or the convention center authority? That's what somebody said to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so
You're
that,
still appointing, that's a good example. The port authority owns property, but you still appoint them.
yeah.
So it'd be
But the
essentially
port,
the same.
that's not our asset, the port authority's property is not the, yeah, but what happened? How, the port authority goes back to what, the 1960s? I think the 19,
Sounds right, I don't know the history.
like
but-
maybe,
50s or 60s,
I'm gonna think early 60s.
right after they opened the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Did the city, and I know, we don't need to know all the history right
Okay.
now, but did the
We'll
city
stop.
get, had the city own that property then, and then the port, does anybody know?
I
I don't even know. I mean,
But I guess let's just go back, that lease option, the long-term lease to a private entity would probably be more along the lines of bringing in a management company to run it. We would own it, we would pay them a fee, much like oftentimes hotels, I own the hotel, but I bring in a Marriott corporation to run it. They put their logo, they run it, I pay them a fee. I don't know that anything's on the table. I don't know that would be a viable option to make the city more money.
do we know if any water systems in Pennsylvania are operated that way under a management agreement?
I think there are. I think there's a lot of, because they would do everything. You hire somebody to do your billing, all of your service, so you certainly could do that. I don't know how many are using that.
But there must be a trade association or something, even a state Trade Association or the American Water Association that would be able to tell us what the trends are in terms of water operations and things.
You're not making any money
Right.
on that, and so it may be good, if it's better service, you might wanna do that. I just don't know that that's, when you're looking at a budget, it's a zero
Right,
benefit.
okay.
So Ed, what would be the advantage of selling it?
You gotta know the values of it.
Well, let's assume you know the value.
Yeah.
Realistically, your three options, the prepayment or the two versions of a sale to the authority, a sale private. A sale to the authority might be a benefit if there's money coming in. Now, the authority has indicated that they have the ability to pay about $100 million. That doesn't change whether it's a prepayment of the lease or a purchase.
No, that is-
My take is, why would you sell the asset versus prepaying a lease? So I don't know that a sale to the authority makes sense, because they don't have the money.
So if we're still,
Sale privately, it potentially could generate revenue for the city.
so if we could still appoint people to a board, but yet we don't own it no more, okay? So it just exists, it don't ever give us any more money, right?
Correct.
Once we take the, I have trouble understanding that. I would have thought it would have been dissolved when we sold it,
No, that's why.
because
that-
we were abrogating ourselves away.
And in a public forum, it's kind of hard, but that's why I don't know that you would realistically want to look, unless the numbers are generating revenue for the city. I don't know that it would benefit you to
That's,
sell it versus prepaying.
and nothing against anybody, that's what kind of questions and answers we're not gonna get in
2019.
2 weeks here.
Right, right.
You know, this is the stuff we really want, long-term, short-term, what our true
I like what-
options are,
I like what Kurt said.
true numbers.
If you, I mean, if you like the idea, I mean, I'm hearing pretty clear that you don't wanna do that this year. If it's something that you are considering, you should look at doing it at the beginning of next year. The reason, it would not impact your budgets. But, as I think Liz pointed out, there's nothing wrong, or maybe, I don't know who's, one of you put it out, there's nothing wrong with making an adjustment that benefits the city other than at the end of the year. You don't have to wait. What we
Right.
often do, it's
Correct.
nobody's fault, but we wait till October or November.
Come up with all
and
these
then-
ideas.
And then we have an idea, and oftentimes you hear frustration, whether it passes or doesn't, of I feel rushed. Do it in January, do it in February, do it in March.
See, you know, I like what Curtis said, and I know the administration disagrees with it, but this is kind of like a one-time fix. Because yeah, it's gonna stretch out over 20 or 30 years, but it's still a one-time fix. It's gonna take care of the current debt,
Debt.
that's on the books right now.
Well, and
Right, it's not, but I think it's not meant to pay, some of it is used to pay kind of this pension thing in this year, but it's not used to meet your, you still have we're spending more than we make problem. You've got to address
Well, I'm
that.
saying the 90 million is gonna go, well.
That goes to debt, it's a one-time
Yes.
reduction of debt.
And even though it has long-range effects, okay? So I'll get to the pension then. The 90 million debt, yes, that's gonna stretch out over 20 years, but if we don't change the culture, and I said that before, if we don't stop issuing needless debt that we can find other ways to fund if we really look into it, we're gonna be back in the same hole 10, 15 years. And then you're not gonna have that,
that's what I think.
you're not gonna have that money.
We're afraid.
Right. We're not gonna have the 4 million to take care of it. And when they counter with, well, the money's worth less in the future, so is the expenses worth, that's all gonna be relevant. That's all gonna be based on current value at that time. So, I mean, you know, we can play this game with numbers all you want. And I've talked to some economists that don't like the deal, and I've talked to some that do. And, you know, nobody's right or wrong in this thing, but here's the problem. There are things we can do right now that we're not doing. And that goes right to the heart of the pension. Haven't sat on the boards for a number of years. There are things that we can do that do not require breaking any union contracts or anything, that could help start the culture change, and we don't. Nobody wants to listen. Nobody has listened. There are things we are doing in the revenue aspect around here. Nobody wants to listen. Well, I'm gonna tell you this, when I'm out of here, I'm gonna be very vocal too. And if you're not gonna listen, somebody's gonna listen, because we have to start changing how we do things. And we can do it, it's within our power, we don't have to abrogate any union contracts, we don't have to change anything. It's stuff that's already on the books, and we're not doing it.
Can I,
And every year after year, and Curtis, you're right, you know, we have to start looking at one-time fixes as, hey, that's fine, it's gonna take care of some for a long, but if we don't change how we do things, it won't be long before, and if history tells you anything, and I've seen this, living a little bit longer than a lot of you, I don't wanna brag, but I've seen it. The stuff that people did 20 and 30 years ago is haunting us today. The pension is in the problem it is, because somebody a long time ago had the blessing of the city, the blessing of the taxpayers, the blessing of the newspaper, the blessing of the media, and they all went wild, and now you look at the books and you go, oh my God, everybody missed it. And here we are paying for it today. Year 2019.
so here's my question. To Mr. President's point, a lot of what we're talking about now is why we wanted to put pause on the lease payment up front in the water. So, because there are legitimate questions, long-term questions, short-term questions, all that. So, I don't know if that has changed. So, so I guess my question is the upfront lease payment back on the table for conversation in this budget? If not, we gotta, okay, put that in the next year, like first quarter, where let it be there, so we can figure out how to pay
Correct.
for all this stuff. Because, so here's the extreme of what I mentioned last week and have been talking about, and first let me say this too, that's not the only thing I've been talking about, like, that's just the thing that is the most controversial. But it just matches the extremes of the actuarial changes that we want to make. So that level, without the upfront lease payment, to have those extreme changes in the mortality tables and all the actuarial things we're changing, rate of return, all of that, the extreme has to be that tax increase level. Now, there's graduated levels between that. And so I think that's where we need to have our respectfully conversation tonight, is to figure out at what level of pressure we're willing to move for this 2020 budget. If it's 6% and all the actuarial and mortality tables being at the most recent,
Just one quick interruption. The mortality tables, every one of the scenarios you're gonna see, shoot those out to 2014. So that, we didn't hold back on those when you look at 6 and 7.5 and 8.
It's the rate of return that is really the.
Correct,
driver, right?
that's the change.
Okay.
So
The
with
mortality
that, so that's
tables-
there,
yeah.
but with that said, the fluctuation, we have to figure out what level of tension we're willing to pay for. If we're not willing to pay for 6%, which is 1.5 or 1.45 mils or whatever, then maybe 7.25, which is maybe a little more realistic to what we get every year. That lessens it to like what, 1.3 mils? Not really sure how much of a difference that is. You know what I mean? So my point is, where are we at? Where's our level of, I want to say courage, but it'll sound negative to say courage. Where's our threshold as a council to vote on a tax increase? At what level are we willing to vote on it? And it's gonna, 0.75 with making the ROR change to 6, it's not gonna happen. If we take it to 7.25, then it's 1.3 or whatever, comes up. I'll put my glasses on.
Yes.
Turn it into cash.
1.35.
1.35, but that's 0.15 away from the nth degree of a tax increase anyway. I'm not saying it's not important, but when we look at it under the news flash of a tax increase, then we look at it second tier, the news flash as a tax increase twice as much was originally proposed. No one says all the nuance that's changed since 0.75. They don't really know that or aren't articulating that. The next thing is, respectfully, on we all know why we use 100,000, because it makes the math easy, but $100,000 home, 1.5 is $150, which equates to like $19 round number a month. $19 round number a month to help fund the significant changes long-term that our city needs is a cheap date in my mind. And I don't mean to make it so simple, but it really is that simple. Because if you're worried about more money you gotta pay, I'm just telling you how much you're gonna have to pay a month. $18.75. If your home is $100,000, and then it graduates up and down from there. So some people could be paying $10 more a month to make the systematic long-term changes that we have to find a way to fund around this table, including the mayor who's not here and other council members and other city leadership. That's what, to me, what this is all about. It's not about being worried about someone. Respectfully, I respect all of our citizens, but some of our citizens aren't as informed. And no matter what we do, because some of the same people who say don't raise taxes are also the same people that are gonna say, well, why did you give away an asset when we sell something? Or why did you take this money up front because you're missing out on $50 million for the next 2? Those same people those are the same people, you know that, right? Like, those are the same people. And so what we have to do is have the gumption to say, based on what we have now, what is the best option moving forward? And we can piecemeal it, and that's fine too, gradually change, or we can just, in some ways, just go for, because here's the thing, 1.5 sounds really like huge until you look at it in what really, how many dollars and cents that is a month, how many dollars and cents that is a year, and put that into the framework that we haven't raised taxes since 2015.
I think
That's
the
all
other thing
significant.
too is, we've also talked about if that rate, the rate of return is being conservative, right, 6%. What is it right now? It's, no, I know, but what are we getting? What are we
What's our
getting?
return been?
Between, it's 7.
I can get the
7
book.
and a third.
I can get the book in there if you
Three-
want.
But
if you
aren't
remember
we
that.
actually even above what we're actually making on the pensions right now, isn't it?
Well, this
better
year's a
than
great year.
Right.
Looking at over the last
No,
10, 15,
I know.
25 years,
Yes.
in those timeframes, conservatively 7.33, 7.34.
But this year is good,
the
it could
number.
be good next year.
Tremendous year.
And what we talked about at the last budget session was that will also, could benefit the bottom line also. I mean, I don't wanna call it gravy, because we don't have gravy in the budget, but with the right, paying attention to, that could help us for the following year, because,
Yes.
yes, so, that's all I'm saying. I mean, then we always have the specter of, everything could fall apart, and then we're
I guess
up
to
a creek, but.
Curtis's point, he did mention the tax increase, but what we're hearing also though is the sewer fee increase, the garbage fee increase. You take all three of those and add that up, it's a little more substantial. I guess also, we're always comparing stuff at $100,000 home, and I know it may be easier with the math, but I don't know if that's the average
It's not, it's 87,000.
7,000, and grant you, maybe when they say the average home in the city of Erie, and even if it's $10 less, it may look good in black and white, and hearing it, then people always, they just hear on the average home of 100,000, they get that figure. And it doesn't matter whether those people own a $40,000 home or a $80,000 home, they're hearing almost a higher number that makes it sound worse sometimes than it is. But
And Mr. President, with that number, and you're right, I wasn't totally clear. The number of $18.75 was included on that $100,000 home, an $80 increase. I just did 40 for the sewer, and 40 for refuse. So it was an $80 increase divided, plus the tax mill increase.
Oh, that was-
Divided by 12. So it was, again, round numbers, $19, and it did include both of those fee increases. And so to my point, I think it makes my point stronger, respectfully, that, and again, I know we did new charts and we had to do
Yeah,
different amounts, but it doesn't change.
No, it's
It did-
212, it's $210. The
Divided
average,
by
average 87,000.
divided by 12 is
Is
$17
an average
a month.
$210 a
Right,
year.
like I did the sheet the other day, it was a $100,000 home.
Yeah, so you,
If you look at the assessed value of everything divided by the properties, at 6%, where we can charge the 1.65 for the tax, it's $210.
and in real numbers, and that's why I want to stay with that too. That's still, for 12 months, that's a $17 and whatever repeated number came up a month increase. And to me, and I can't speak for anybody else, but to me, that's a small price to pay overall for the significant change that we're going to make with this level of tax increase. And that's not saying we won't do the water, it's not saying we won't do the lease payment later, next year. Like that's also on the table, which could be, of course, we don't have room for gravy, but it does take some tension off later as well. Again, I'm not trying to be like the super tax everybody guy, but I don't know what else we do. At this point, if the lease payment is off the table for the 2020 budget, we have to now just figure out what level of pressure we want to have with that
Okay, I guess-
rate of return, and that equals whatever the level of tax increase threshold would be. Those two go coordinate hand in hand, and I think that's where we're at. We have to figure that out.
And with, once again, with Curtis being said, is there anything anybody sees in the, even the revised budget book we got that jumps out at anybody that we can possibly adjust to help offset maybe some of the increase that shows that we're doing our due diligence instead of just the numbers are what they are, and even though it's,
But here's the thing, John, I'm gonna say this, and I'm talking big today because I'm kind of wrapping up and I'm not running for anything, and sometimes it makes it easier to just be really transparent and honest, but like bare knuckle, this is why we are where we are. I've been on this council for 13 years, and every year, and I will own every bit of accountability I have to be a part of the team because I'm always a team player. But this is where we get stuck every time. We know what we have to do, but we'll get phone, and me too, phone calls, emails, stopped at Country Fair, stopped at Wegmans, stopped at Walmart, and browbeat by people who don't have the privilege of the information we have, nor the responsibility to make the decisions that we have to make. And we back up. You know how many times we've talked about mortality tables and changing rates of returns in the last 13 years?
Since
Probably
2000
every year since I've been here,
Since
and we have
2001.
never done it. We
Since
got to the
2001.
table, we got to a conversation, sometimes it didn't even make it to the table for conversation. My thing is, this is where we are. Let's go all in. And again, that may not be a tax increase at that rate. I'm just saying, there's,
Paul, is there anything,
I don't-
did
I don't-
anything else fall out of the sky between last week and today where you said, oh, maybe we can chisel this out?
No.
Did nothing, okay.
I mean, we got and I know I brought it up before, economic development. We got our report today via email or whatever. We have over $8.6 million lent out for different companies, but we're playing the bank. How much of that is in this budget for this 2020?
Well, if you look at the debt service page, there's about $1.7 million going to the Business Development Fund.
Because we were able to include that.
Yeah, that was
It would have been part of the lease thing, but we have it in there. anyhow,
correct.
Okay.
So we're
That
giving
was-
one,
That was
so,
part of the last year, the bond refunding, where we were gonna do $4 million, and we weren't able to do it all at once. So we did 2.2 million and a quarter last year, so the balance of it is in there for this year.
so this year we're loaning out another 1.7 million.
Well,
Yes.
we've applied to the Economic Development Association for an additional $1 million, which requires a match. So that could actually be 2.7 million.
So I guess what I'm saying is we don't have the finances to balance the budget, but we're lending out money that we really don't have.
We can stop loaning to businesses and stop reading.
Well, I
the
guess
income tax
we
and-
did a
and-
LRTA, and I'm not
See?
saying it's,
That's what I mean. All of this stuff comes
And
at a
has that-
price.
And we can lose that extra
Yeah.
$1 million.
Nobody wants to
from the
give up
grant
anything.
that requires
Nobody wants to give
match.
up anything.
Right.
And nobody wants to charge.
Nobody
anything.
wants, not my department, not my backyard.
I feel like I feel like I'm being a jerk, and but I really, it's my passion and my heart, is that this is really, this, I don't know
Curtis,
what else we're gonna
you're
do.
not, Curtis, you're not wrong. Look,
know what
2000,
else we're gonna do.
when I took office here in the city, 2001, we were discussing this, Paul wasn't even here, and neither was the famous Ron Komorek I talked to. But no, I mean, seriously, we've been talking about this on the board level of the pension for years. Somewhere in, when did Ron?
He was here, he died in 8.
Okay, so somewhere around 2006 or 7.
It's already loaned out.
He and I got together and we did a study, an unofficial one. The mayor didn't want to do it. We did it on our own. It was ugly.
The applications are
It came at a
loaned
political
because it was
price.
promised to-
But you're right. If we're not willing to take the political risk, to do what has to be done, and I know it sounds like I'm saying it too because I'm gone, but I've done it before when I was on the school board and everything. I had to make some rough decisions. You can't worry about the next election. You have to look at where this city's gonna be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And the things we don't do, Curtis, you're absolutely right. The things that we didn't do in the past come back to haunt you. When you open up that closet door, the bones come flying out at you.
And I think that revolving loan fund it has a good track record. It also is a good, helps to tell the story of what's happening in Erie. I mean, I've been also critical of like EDDC, as anybody knows who's listened to me. But these are other businesses that are getting something that they would not be able to get somewhere else. And they're in the city and they are creating jobs. And I think it's a good part of the narrative
Well,
about how
It is,
Erie
but
is.
maybe this year we have to cut it. Maybe-
what if you adjust, I mean, I'm not saying cut it completely out. If there's $1 million sitting on a table of matching funds,
But only if we give them in. So whatever we cut,
Well, Chris,
And
I think
then,
he's
like,
got it all
it's,
promised out, yeah.
people have applied for it, right?
Promised.
and that's a part, you should never promise something. See, this is what gets me.
they're
I don't,
promising before it's even passed in the budget.
I don't know who in administration does this, but you can't promise something you haven't got okayed yet.
It was okay.
Well,
It
sort
was
of
okay
okay,
when we-
but the money hasn't been appropriated yet.
See, and there's my point again. We have multiple things we're trying to figure out. It makes perfect sense to do this economic development work because it's great. That's one of the things that I think does really well. Even though we take a lot of risk and we're loaning at a really low rate, and a lot of those folks can't get, they're not maybe
We're
bankable
actually
on some
losing money.
levels, and we could potentially be losing, as somebody said, maybe losing some dollars on one end, but the economic benefit and spillover is significant. Quality of life, developing businesses in our community, growing, that has a price and it also has a value to it. Here's the thing, as the mayor and administration, as council members, we have to balance all of that. So we have got this money parsed out because it was approved 2 years ago, and this is the second installment of the payment and all of that, I get it. But at the same time, again, we are responsible to figure out how do we do that, take care of that responsibility. That's another responsibility. Really, if we look at it appropriately, it's a debt that we have to pay because we said this is how we're gonna do it. We've got the money out there. People are expecting the promised money that is out there. You know what I mean? So
Is 1.7 promised or 2.7?
I don't know. I mean, we're looking at the long term here. That's what we're trying to look at. The only way out of this is to expand the tax base. And we're not gonna do that if we don't grow the economy. This is one of our key tools for doing that.
And I understand that, but that
So,
doesn't.
I don't
is-
know what was promised. You would have to ask Chris Rowan.
I didn't know if only one, if the billion matching is promised as well as the 1.7, or if he just has 1.7
What I
promised.
know is he's trying to grow that fund because the demand exceeds the resources that we have. And we are adding jobs in the city. We are increasing our earned income tax as a result. We are providing more jobs for people by providing those resources. helps us in the long run.
And I'm not saying it hasn't done it, I'm just, you'll start looking at the monies we have out. Today, we got 8.6 or whatever we have loaned out, and we're gonna loan out another 1.7. That's $10 million we're being the bank of when we're asking the taxpayers to
Those
help
projects,
us.
most of those projects would not happen without the city's assistance. You can
Well-
talk to Chris about that. He provides the gap funding. That would, those projects just wouldn't happen.
And,
We
and
would-
you're
we
telling
would
me
be
that, I'm
losing
not
jobs.
saying the general public knows that.
I don't know if the general, I don't know what. the
You know what
general-
I mean? I'm just-
Well, I know that
I'm explaining
I
to
would
you.
say with the press conferences, they should be paying attention. I mean, it's
I mean,
not just
every
in the,
single week, we're talking about
Right,
the stuff
yeah.
that we're trying to do.
yeah, I mean, I don't
to
know
grow
how
the
else
tax
you,
base.
I don't know how else you let people know. You're trying every avenue possible to let people know what's happening. in
People
that
only know
regard.
one thing, okay? It's like it tossed at me. They don't care how it happens. All they look at is their tax bill. And they look over the border, and I'm pretty close to the border. And they go, what prevents me from moving a mile south? And I asked some of our employees that question. You know, the ones that don't live in the city, you know, where's your faith, you know? So we gotta start bringing people, not only businesses, we have to start bringing people that are gonna reside here, that are gonna start buying the goods and services. That's our big job. When I was a young man, 138,000 people were here, and they all, per capita income was a lot higher. And, you know, you can play the game all you want, but you're right, Curtis, we either have to, and there's some tough decisions.
I have a question. So this is a little bit different, separate from everything else. So, I know I think Paul, you had done some general, like, if we were to make some fee increases and do some stuff, there's like a block of money, or like it's not the right way to say it. Like $200,000 if we made some changes here, there,
Well-
round number. And I,
That was based on one of the things was,
the amusement tax.
Yeah.
increase. And that's what I want to speak specifically to. So, the thought that I had, this is because I think crazy things. So, in part of the LERTA conversation that we were in earlier this year was how do we, as a city, find a way to give back into the community, to citizens outside of the downtown, right, in the business, and LERTA affects a lot of what's happening down here. Of course, people can build anywhere in the city and get LERTA, but there was a fund that was developed, and it's kind of, I won't say it's on the shelf because I don't know the nuance of what's going on. I know Kathy's gonna be like the facilitator of that at some point, but I know also part of what was discussed was that there would be a structure set up for that. One issue was, where do we get the funding? I know there were some donations made. There's been a lot of talk about philanthropic giving to that fund. I know, ironically, with Chris Groner's, one of his funds, giving $25,000 out of their, you know, the interest that's generated on the money that he has and he works with. One of the criticisms that I had, and I think all of us had, is that there's no significant means of funding that. And so how much investment are we really making? Or was that just kind of let's kind of pacify some things and move this forward? I mean, respectfully. With that said, I was interested in having a conversation around increasing the amusement tax from 3 to 5% and utilizing that increase and designating it specifically to that fund. And what it does is, first of all, it shows intentionality that we actually really are invested in doing some things around redevelopment.
And it makes it
in
look
those
like we're not
ways.
balancing the budget too.
And we're not balancing the budget off of $166,000 that it would increase. Another piece to that is with the conversation around body cameras with the police department. One of the big issues is, okay, there's upfront costs, but also some of the long-term annual cost is data storage. Where do you keep and how do we fund paying for the data that has to be kept in wherever it needs to be kept. And that has a value or a cost to it. So the second part, that what I wanted to maybe just throw out is not all of that funding goes, from that tax increase goes to that fund, but a portion of it also goes to paying for the storage for, if that's gonna be if that $40,000 or $50,000 a year is gonna be the thing that prohibits us from moving forward with body cameras to keep our police and citizen and police safe, to me, that's a good place to utilize some of that tax revenue increase. Another reason I think it makes sense is because it doesn't just solely hit our city residents. Of course, any of us that go to events, we have to pay a little bit more. But they're raising the cost of tickets for everything anyway. I remember when we first initiated the amusement tax, you know, people literally crying at the podium, and, you know, Mr. Wells respectfully doing his job, and he said, well, you know, we can't do that, we can't afford to do that. And then someone said, don't you guys increase certain fees? Yeah, well, we have a different way of doing it. Well, this is the way we have to do it, potentially. And again, it gets revenue for specific areas in our city that need it. And it doesn't hit everyone in the city. It hits people that come in to enjoy the quality of life events in our city. As something I want to throw out, I talked to a couple people about it, batted it around a little bit. I know that's small peanuts compared to $90 million upfront lease payments and $4 million for the debt in a budget, but I think it would show in this process that we are being intentional around
And it's a
doing
long-term
some
solution.
and it's repetitive or residual money, like still coming in to fund that, and then that gives Kathy and whatever setup is developed with that fund, it gives them funds to operate, and it doesn't take from anything that's happening now. I was pretty strategic and intentional in asking the administration about the amusement tax. Like, do you want to move? Do you have plans for that? No. So again, it kind of empowered me to kind of bring it up as a conversation piece. So again, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if there's any appetite to have more
I would
conversation
say,
about it, but
Curtis, you have, to make your idea work, I'd put it in a separate fund, you know, that portion, 2%, but I would put it where it would take a council super vote to, you know,
well,
to
there's
destroy the attention.
a fund established
Yeah,
already by ordinance.
so we could
Correct.
we
And
could
that
make the
established
2% by
already.
ordinance go into that fund.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so as not to change, if we ever wanted to not change, we could handle that like the water fund. If we wanted to make sure it never got to be the playtoy of any administration or any council, that we intend for it to be for this fund, we could do that by ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, I'm kind of, again, throwing that out for.
Because I think it's a good,
The nuance of it, we have to figure out, but the general idea is, I think we've got a fund that's gonna be dormant if we don't get intentional about it. And I think that if we are serious about the issue of police cameras, this is in some of the budgetary or financial components, that may be a hang up for that. This might remedy that as well.
and we made promises. I mean, when we, you know, all of us gave up a little bit to make a good decision, and that was one of the promises we made, was that, you know, we would set up this fund. So I think if we're people of our word, we gotta do it. And I think it's a good idea. I mean, we bandied this around for a couple of years, raising it.
This, and before it was a component of balancing the budget.
Right.
That $166,000 is gonna balance the budget, but we can definitely be intentional with it.
But what it does do is, and I always say this, and people don't catch it sometimes, but even doing little things like this relieves the general budget of a responsibility.
And it lets people know that we are being, and I use that word a lot during the alert conversations, intentional in putting something into a fund that is, that people will see is directly towards what they need and what we've told them we were gonna do. Just my thought.
I like it, but
I like it. I just want to ask Renee one thing. Where's the matching fund coming from for the revolving loan? Did you say-
Economic Development Association, it's federal fund.
Yeah, and I just looked up a story from, let's see when this is, November 14th, 2019. There are 520 such revolving loan funds across the country. And some municipalities are looking at innovative ways to get some of that funding into the hands of women and minority-owned businesses too, so we are not an outlier in having that, so. I guess I'm not in favor of cutting out the money for the revolving loan fund.
And I didn't say even
No.
cut out all of it, just even, didn't know if there was a portion of it, if there's $1 million matching and they have $1 million, then they'd actually get 2 million instead of, I mean, we gotta do some type of due diligence here and just, instead of raise taxes. I mean, I didn't even, you know, there again, Fifth Floor is doing a good job, but their budget went up from $300,000 2 years ago to over $900,000. I know there's more employees and everything that goes with it, but, I mean,
Those
there's,
positions that were created from eliminated positions.
yes,
So,
but, I mean, and it,
But
like
at the
I
end of the
said,
day, Renee, what people want, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, they really want cuts. The letters we got, they were talking about across the board, you got it too.
Oh,
And
the
we all
person-
know that's almost impossible,
The person who worked at American Meter and,
yeah.
yeah, but don't cut police and fire.
Well, he
But-
pointed,
Well, that's
the
even-
one I loved was
That's
when,
what the person said.
the one I loved is when we were 140,000, what was our manpower then? And I look back and I'm thinking, I think we actually are down from the golden days, because I can remember when we had a guy in the basement that did nothing more than sit there handing out keys. We had double the amount of employees around here on maintenance. I think we have cut, you know, but to make any further cuts, we all know where that has to come from, and that's ugly.
the force was 225.
Pardon?
The force was 225.
No, I'm not talking even there, I'm talking about, we had people around City Hall that didn't know what they were tripping each other. We had a gentleman that all he did was hand out keys in the basement, in that little booth. We had double the amount of maintenance personnel. Those all been cut, okay? Not even just the
Everything's
police.
been cut, that's why it's difficult to keep up with the demand. You still have to maintain the exact same.
And when I first started, we had, with all due, we had, every office you went in, and Paul, right outside of Paul's office, there was a young lady that did nothing more than was a, I don't know, what do you call it? A secretary or receptionist for the whole area. Those all been cut.
even, and I know we budgeted for it, but, police and fire overtime, that equals $2.5 million.
We cannot put police on the street.
I mean,
I mean, with the complement of 173 officers and people out who are sick or injured on light duty, the only way you can make it up is with overtime.
I think it would be helpful though, going into 2020, to have, maybe every month we have a different department head come and say, this is how I am changing the culture. This is my innovative idea of the month. This is my innovative idea of the quarter. This is gonna save us money. You know, we have somebody retiring, we're gonna, restructure. You know, and I brought up Ed last time because that was a great example of how to, have a reduction in force from FTEs in the city solicitor's office. It was
And you have-
innovative and it's working. And there was pushback to that when it was presented by the administration, but Ed, I know you've
And I
already
was a
said
crit-
this, but since there are people out there watching, could you just repeat the fact that there are fewer people now working in the city solicitor's office, correct? And you are not walking away with a pension because you are a contract
No,
employee.
I mean, I think the way it's restructured is there were 5 attorneys and 2 staff in the office for a total of 6. And we've now gone down to 3 attorneys and 2 staff. Of the 3 attorneys, 2 are employees, but 1 is not covered under health insurance, and 1 is not covered under the pension. I'm not covered, I'm not an employee, so I'm not covered under anything, I get no benefits. And so there's no pension, no health insurance, no overtime, no sick days.
just like us.
Right, without all the glory, but, that has resulted, I think, in a savings. And we've also changed the way we we operate with insurance, because we used to have insurance that had a $50,000 deductible, and we would keep all of the work unless we chose to farm it out. Now, what's happened is our deductible goes down to 10,000, our premium went down by 100,000. And most of the work goes out of our office, but the key is we spend time not having any work go anywhere. I mean, that's the whole idea, is not to get into these litigation matters.
And I know.
So it's work.
Yeah, we're talking about, you know, legal versus other departments, but I still was frustrated this year, say when Public Works came in, and the whole presentation was about, well, we're only 17% of the workforce, or whatever it was. We're only take 17% of the budget, but we're you know, it was all about justifying what their ask was. And it's never been, I have yet to see somebody come in and say, this is what I'm doing. Now, I did finally get something out of Chuck Zisk when he was talking about the garbage trucks. Now we have GPS on them to make sure that we're being more efficient. But council shouldn't have to be hammering on that. Those kinds of things should be top of mind for department heads who come in and say, you know what, council is really concerned about long-term fixes to the budget. They're the ones who, because it's not gonna be the public works person who's gonna be collared somewhere and said, why are you raising taxes? It's gonna be us who are going to be called you people. So I would like to see that culture that Kaz is talking about. It started at the top, but it also has to be grassroots and it has to be across the board. So, 'cause otherwise we're gonna be having the same conversation a year
Well,
from
isn't
now.
it amazing, we're talking about, we're looking for 1.7 million, right? We got, and it isn't all 1 year, Paul, so I understand this. 2.7 in parking tickets, right? 600,000 BIU things. Building permits that aren't being accurately figured properly. If that was all done, maybe we're not in this, maybe we're not as bad, or maybe we're balanced. These are things you can do right now, but nobody wants to listen. I'm spouting bull crap. I'm spouting bull crap,
Not
you know.
really,
Huh?
no, these things weren't done, but we're working on them now.
What, working on it means they gotta change, and
Well, it's
you know
not gonna
what?
happen overnight.
Yes, it is.
It
You-
is?
Yes, and
You
edict
can
goes
collect-
down right
you can
away.
collect
I'm gonna tell you
2.7
what,
million in
Renee,
parking tickets
I'm gonna tell you,
overnight.
I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I don't think I can do it for tomorrow. I'm gonna give it to Liz or one of the council people. I'm gonna get an ordinance, hopefully passed, that demands that when we set out a building permit, that we have to have backup to prove what was done with it. It's not somebody's subjective idea of what it costs. It's either a bill or an estimate, and we follow up on it. Other communities have done this. I can't come in and tell you I'm gonna build a garage, my mythical garage, I think I am gonna build finally. I can't tell you it's gonna cost $200. You know that's wrong, okay? We have one project. Yes, it was pointed out by, you know, a certain person everybody doesn't like, but I checked on it. It was, building permit went out for half the value. And it was featured in the Erie newspaper. So somebody's either lying, either the paper, the media, or we are. You can't allow that stuff to happen. When I was here in controller, that whole project across the street, the federal thing, federal building, there wasn't any taxes collected, income taxes or otherwise.
And Kaz is right. I think I got all excited about a week ago, called Kaz. I said, Pittsburgh is doing this. Have linked their contractors and building permits with the city income tax so that they can track who are the long-term contractors here to make sure that they're paying income tax. So it wasn't an idea out of left field. It's being implemented.
No,
in
you can
Pittsburgh.
do it right now. You can just make a mayoral request that this is what has to happen. And bring somebody in. The auditors looked at this, and they found out we do not have a procedure in place to do this. That's lost revenue. That's bleeding money out of the tree, just like the parking authority, the parking ticket money. Nobody knew about it. I knew about it. I've been tracking it for years because I wondered what happened with it.
Do we have the workforce that can do that now?
Did anybody, yeah, well, look, if you didn't, then you should have come to council. Somebody should have said, we can't handle it. That's why we wound up farming it out, thanks to the good work of the the finance department. We are farming that out to somebody that can handle it.
The parking tickets.
Yes.
Right, but with the building permits, how much money would we bring in and how much will we have to
Well,
pay
look, if I
somebody?
come in,
Has that been
Renee,
studied?
if I come in and tell you, and you ask me how much a project costs,
Yes.
right? Now, you know what a house costs to build roughly, right?
Sure.
What if I tell you I can do it for 70,000? And I'm building a house that you obviously know is 100,000. Don't you think you should have some kind of, like after, before, have an estimate and
that's
after,
a
like
set.
Pittsburgh's doing it? We can't do like we've been doing it. We got buildings that haven't even been inspected. We got apartment, when I found out that we're not even inspecting Merciers, if somebody went to college, when was the last time you went to a college and they didn't have a dorm? And you said that to me the other night. There was nothing there that triggered it. There's a 5-story building there that triggered it, and we're not inspecting it. And who did I find that out? From our people. That's travesty, okay? You wonder why the public lost, and there's a department head there, and that should have been on his radar. Hell, I could see the building going up, and everybody knew about it. We were there at the grand opening, some of us. Okay? So I don't know how you wash that away.
If we're gonna be consistent and we're gonna be proactive,
But look how much has went out
then we
now.
need to study it to find out how much we would collect if we had somebody doing it, if we have the staff who can do it, or if we need to hire somebody, and if we would make more than we're paying the person to collect the money. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it.
Right
I'm
now-
saying we have to
Renee,
look at it to
Renee,
see if it would
That's
actually make
BS.
us money.
Renee,
That's BS?
right now, that we can put up a thing in, we can put something in place right now that says, when somebody comes in, this is what you do. We can track it later, but right now we can make those changes. You just can't come in and give us a value. Give us an estimate, and then it's subject to, final approval, and if we have to adjust the billing permit, so be it. But you can't let money drip out like that here. And you can't issue parking tickets and you don't collect them without saying something. We are not the administration. We do not get
That's
paid
why we
to
hired
run
the
the thing.
collection firm.
Huh?
That's why we hired the collection firm.
No, you didn't do that. That was council that pushed you into it, and I can go back and show you, okay? I don't mind sharing the fame and fortune, but it was council that brought that up, okay? And we forced the issue, and thanks to administration, you went out with our directive. But it was council that pointed that out.
Well, are we doing anything else different tonight?
No, I don't think so. But I think we gotta change the culture. I'm tired of hearing this stuff about, we can't, we can't,
Are
we
we doing
can't.
anything?
I didn't say we couldn't.
So my question is,
Oh,
I did kind of throw out a thing about the
Amusement
amusement
tax.
tax. There's only a couple of us here now at this point. Tomorrow, we need to have something to vote on,
Right.
or not. I don't know if that's
Well,
where we are.
I guess
That's one, so let me say this, so that's one thing, that's one change that I'm putting on the table for consideration.
That's gonna change 1.45 to 1.47 or something.
What's your suggestion that you wanna like?
The amusement tax increase from 3% to 5%, and we can work the nuances of it out when we have to put it in ordinance form or something, but that 2% increase would go towards the, what is it, reinvestment, fried, thank
But
you.
you're not using that
Yeah.
to
that
balance the
doesn't-
budget?
No,
Then, and I'm not, you can do it now, I'm not saying you don't,
Yep.
that's a decision of council, but you don't have to do it now. You can do it January, you can do it February, March.
well, at this point, I won't be here, so the body would have to
We
vote
wanna
on
make
it.
sure we got the
You'd
votes.
have to vote on it in the future, so I agree with you. I just wanted to put it out there because that's a component part of the numbers in one way, shape, or form. I guess the only thing my question is, what's our, I guess
What's
the
our
original
appetite?
question, what's our appetite?
I
With-
told you I'm willing to go with the 6%.
I am too.
Huh? But I am, I won't speak for anybody else. I would've done it even if no matter what the
So
circumstance.
at 6%, then we're at full
We're at 1 point,
4 or 5.
4 or 5 plus,
plus.
1.5.
somewhere in that neighborhood.
neighborhood.
Yeah, I'll do the math tomorrow morning.
as long as let's put it this way, I'd like to go all the way. But if it's a compromise, as long as the income tax comes where the suburbanites and the city people pay the same, I'm okay with that. But I have the will to go all the way.
I think there's such a small
Change in,
step between 6 and 7.25. Everything matters, but it's from one round number, well, whole number, 1.5 to 1.35.
Yes.
Is the difference. Should we even be having this conversation respectfully? You know, and I mean, this all means something, and every penny, including myself, who no longer has a full-time job and jumped off the cliff of trying to be a businessman on his own, gotta pay taxes and pays all my, I get it, it's tight for a lot of people, including myself. With that said, what we're talking about,
And part of the culture changes, like we told the administration, we would like more reasonable adjustments every year. You know, rather than feeling the political pressure that, well, we're not gonna win re-election or something. Gotta stop that. I mean, we're not here to run for office. We're here to make the decisions. They're tough ones. But,
I'm willing to say 6% for the rate of return.
and I think you're right, Chris, because in the end, like, everything that's an important, and I think when we do this, I would suggest, my experience with the school board tells me this, that when we have a press conference, hopefully, council will be there, we explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what the good results are, because there are good results. People are gonna look at the tax bill, but if we say, look, we saved the loan fund, we did this, we made some hard decisions for the future, but it's gotta be a joint thing. It can't be just administration. We should be both there, because we're both making this.
and we wanna be solvent. We don't wanna end
No,
up.
we do.
We need to address that structural deficit, or what is the alternative?
But let us
The
write-
alternative
let-
would be
right.
teetering on, Act 47. I mean, I know everybody said, well, we aren't that badly off, but how many years and decades can we go out of not tackling this?
I listened to one announcer today, and he was almost comical. You know, it was like it was a setup, an interview, you know. So I'm saying, we got to write the narrative. This is our thing. We, like Curtis, you said it, we are privy to information that people can find out, but they're not into it as much as we are. We live it every day.
And
We should tell them what's happening here.
so basically, Curtis, you're saying that if you go to 7.25, it's really, and Paul, also a negligible change in the tax that's, yeah,
0.5 round, the whole number.
1/10 of a mil.
yeah.
And we're gonna go,
And
with
it's-
the income tax, we're gonna go from
It's about
collecting,
$8 a person,
That's how much?
$8.
we'll collect less income tax.
Yes, correct. That would lower the special levy for us to 1.5 and raise it from 1.18 to 1.5 for non-city residents.
That is a one plus that the city's levy would be lessened.
But that's only good, but see,
I know,
Yeah.
I'm not, it isn't,
see, you got two factions here. You got the elderly, and you got the working public. And this tax will affect people in different ways, Obviously, if you're someone like my mother, she's only looking at the fees and income, the real estate part. She's not looking at the income tax.
something else we can put back on the table, maybe, it was brought up many years ago, $100, college student fee for city services, between the Mercyhurst and McGann. I know it's been a little, gray area,
Yeah.
but that
It
can,
was tried, but I never found out whether,
who's doing the pushback, because
Well-
nothing against again, we got a little bit from them in a car and
it was Mayor Flippy, he did it, but I can't remember if it was, I know council got a lot of kickback, but I never did find out if it was illegal or not.
No, they did it, I think they were
Are we-
doing it in other cities, like Pittsburgh possibly.
Well, it was interesting, Jim, when I took the treasury exam, and they tell you what taxes you're allowed to charge legally, there's a lot of things under that aren't there. So I don't know whether we can, as a third-class city, can do it. Because you can't compare Erie to Pittsburgh, which is a second class, or Philadelphia, which is, you know.
I don't want anybody to go back, I mean, full disclosure here. If we do only go to 7.25, the $10 is only the real estate portion of it. My income tax, if I'm an average citizen, would go down about 50 bucks too. I mean, something tomorrow going, oh, yeah, it's 60 bucks.
So you're saying the working man
Yes.
that lives in the city, theirs would go down 50?
If I live in the city and I make an average wage according to the US Census, and I own an average house according to the assessed value of the properties in Erie,
John Doe's talking
I
about, Jay
would then
Doe.
save about $60. So it's not just that 10. So we don't get,
$60 a year?
we don't bring that up, you know, like
Say
somebody goes
60,
home.
still
the
has
sheets
his
we get-
property
Remember, the
taxes.
sheets,
10 of which is real estate.
yeah, there's income tax, real estate, sewer, and refuse.
So-
4 parts.
So we go halfway, so, and I guess, again, that's part of what the pressure point we're at.
Yeah.
Is that if we do that, if there has some certain amount of safe benefit in some ways, but if we go all the way, you just gotta pay for it, I mean, we're paying for
Yes.
it. Cause if we're gonna go 7.25, I think I can't speak for the administration, but I think there's a reason that you all said 6%. And you wanna get to that 6%.
That's, it's in order to raise
To get to
the,
raise to
the special levy from one to the other.
There's a reason, there's an equation that goes,
And you won't be making changes going forward.
Right,
and that's another thing. We're at a pivotal point, like, we can do a piece and do some more next year, and we're gonna have all these same conversations again. And someone's gonna say, well, why didn't you just do it last year? We could've just, maybe that's where we're looking.
And you save,
I don't know.
I think you save 67.3 million from the current projection. So it is a pain up front, but, and I'm not using a proper finance term, but it essentially fixes the pension.
All in 1 year?
No,
Well,
But going forward.
the change is done.
Yes.
Now you're.
Now you're solving to the
Work.
extent
And
where,
now again,
Didn't
as
change
was
has to
pointed
work.
out, if you had a catastrophic drop in the stock market, it could create a problem. But a downturn in the stock market will not have a dramatic effect on this.
As
yeah,
much,
Ed,
as much.
hold on.
And an
You got,
upswing
I mean,
would
you
be
got
huge.
the sheets Don passed out, and again, he's, the first,
he's
there,
not a finance director.
no, there's 11 years of a little bit of pain. After that, the gains you'll receive in the sheets that Don prepared are huge. So it's a big deal.
But with that being said, going into contract negotiations or whatever, it would be astronomical if they could get off this pension end of it when the new hires are.
Yes, but police and fire, state law, have to get a pension.
Yeah, but it doesn't say what kind.
Go-
But I think you said that
It doesn't say.
it reassures the current employees that there's money here to pay for their
Yes.
pensions, correct?
That's the-
Yeah.
that
I
are
mean,
living longer and.
And I think that part of the concern, and again, some of this goes to negotiation ideas.
Doesn't have to be.
Part of the
defined.
concern
I
from
think
the
it should be
employees has been, will I have a pension? This will fix that, and again, I'm using overly simplistic terms, there's some costs up front, but long-term, the savings are massive. What it does is it gives you stability. That doesn't preclude or doesn't address anything with, changes to the pension. And frankly, I think that you're gonna have that candid discussion with all of the unions. Police and fire are different, because they're governed by a different set of rules. But with any of the four, you say, look, we fixed it for the current employees, we fixed the pension in large part. But this problem will rear its ugly head again over the next 40, 50 years if we don't do something with the pension. We have to do some changes that will prevent us from spending more than we make. And so I think that you're gonna have those discussions on the pension with all four unions. But police and fire are getting hard.
Is there anything, I know we have to give them a pension, but looking for it in the future, does it have to be a defined benefit? It does? How did the school teachers get out of it? Yeah, but I mean,
Don't forget they have.
so you're saying we have to provide a defined benefit?
To police and fire.
So we'll never get out of the hole then?
That is, no, that isn't, I mean, that is correct, but I think you'll never get out of the hole.
Not as long as you got to, if you can't, like, offer a hybrid plan, then you really don't have too much to deal with.
You probably need to look at that with your, non-union, with your Teamsters and your
You know, I agree with you, Ed, but here's the problem. It's not the, and I'll go to bat for the O and E. It's not the O and E that's in trouble, okay? The O and E, and I can show you the numbers right in this book.
On this book.
This book, real book. The O and E is making progress, okay? It's not the one that's in trouble. You know, it's just like when PFM come up with this bright idea, they're gonna, 900,000 was the target they were after with the 401 or the 457. Yeah, that's a little problem, but that's not a problem. The problem is, and like, we don't wanna talk about it. 2/3 of the pensions are hard for us to maintain, okay?
86%.
Pardon?
It's about 85%.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
I know we're all gonna get hammered, cause, look,
It is.
my dad was a policeman.
I am gonna stick
okay?
up for him.
But we have to look at,
O and E's 15% of the pension, it's the police and fire.
right,
There are
So, I mean, you know-
adjustments that can be made
Yes.
to a police and fire pension that we can certainly look at with those unions.
and I gave the mayor a suggestion the other day. I'm not gonna say it publicly, but I gave it to him, and I think it bears fruit that if he attended more meetings and sat there and watched it, these are things we can do right now that are not contractual, okay? I'll be glad to discuss it with you after the meeting.
Is
But-
100% spousal benefit?
Well, that's negotiated, you know.
Right, that's what.
And see, here,
Those are,
That's what I was
some
asking.
of the issues that are not mandated by the law.
Right, that's what I'm.
And I think that you know, Kaz talked about a culture change, I think. I'm still relatively new, so I can say, I think there is a different approach, and I think that in the fire contract negotiations, for example, there were no changes to the pension, but there was, significant movement on historical salary increases with no salary increase going next year. And what that did, that current payout, the 0, 1, 1.5, 2, has massive savings to the pension plan because of cost. So there are a number of ways to address it. And
Are there savings also by not having, so you didn't have to go to arbitration for the fire, right? Is there like a cost savings even there and not having, had to go to?
there's a huge savings to both sides. I mean,
Okay,
we have not, no, I don't wanna jeopardize
you don't wanna,
anything, but
okay,
This was,
since January of 2017, we have not, or 18, we have not had any union arbitration. None. And that is good. Now, there may come a time, but there may come a time when that has to happen. Because there may not always be a meeting of the minds, but for the past 2 years, we've been able to reach a meeting of the minds and avoid that, and it's huge savings. Now, on any given case, it doesn't break the bank, but, I mean, it's 10,000 plus 5,000 plus 3,000. In a case, all of a sudden, the city's shelling out $25,000, and the union's shelling out a similar amount.
and I wanna say, Ed, that, you know, I, you know, having worked with the pension funds, they have done, they're talk about a culture change. I have watched over the years how the boards have cut down some of the loopholes, because they realize that's their pension. You know, they have a vested interest in it, and that's what I mean by a culture
There's
change.
been some changes.
And it wasn't too long ago, when I was controller, that they made a bad decision. We were in a bad market. It was really a bad market. And the state gave us an out, the smoothing method. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, and what that meant was, you know, that was like balanced billing. And We took it, even though the board and everybody else said, let's eat the pain, let's take it now, because, you know, it looks good for the short term. Where are we now? Paying for it. This is what I mean by paying, you know, you pay for it later.
Okay, Jim
Paul.
had a,
Does us doing any of these adjustments with the pension affect what the state gives us?
no,
We'll still get,
we've still got our state aid, yes.
we get more solvent on it, they're still gonna give us,
State aid, yes.
okay.
It's based on a set value per person, police and fire get two, what they call.
We'd have to
a
get
unit.
real good, right, to
O&E
lose
gets
it?
1 unit at, like, what is it, 4,500
Yeah.
or something.
How good,
Police and fire get two.
It's in the book.
Teresa, how good we have to get to lose it?
You gotta be up over,
Our distress level.
80.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
Jim,
is
that's
78%.
10,
What is the O&E at right now?
again, full
We're at
disclosure,
82,
once we become
82%.
funded
82?
to a higher level,
The O&E's at 82.
the special levy tax,
Might go away.
yes,
Yeah.
Teresa, would they, if the O&E hit
For
like
both,
88,
just
they'd take
for
that
the
away from there?
outside?
everybody.
Everybody.
But
you
that's,
won't need it.
that's
We're
years,
at
You
eighty.
don't need
I'll
it.
wait.
that's 10 years in the future.
That's to pay, I mean, the skeptic will say it's not gonna get, if you do nothing, it's gonna implode. If you do this and it doesn't get a whole lot better, then you'll be able to continue to charge it. If it gets better, then the reality
mean,
is you'll lose it, but
Yeah.
the reality is also you didn't need it.
Yeah.
It's like being on welfare when
I
you
guess
get
that-
a job.
I
you
got
don't
a
need
job,
it.
I'm gonna lose that,
I'm gonna
yeah,
make as
but-
much as I want.
Curtis,
Yeah.
I guess the sheet Don prepared there, if you look at the first year, the MMO is gonna be about $30 million, all inclusive. It doesn't get to about the 13th year where it hits at 19 million, where our funding level gets to the point where we're going to be, we're not gonna be fully funded, but we will not be in the distressed level anymore. So that,
And that kind of matches the timeframe, 11, 12 years that you mentioned before, of seeing so much of the benefits of what we're doing.
yes.
And I will say, and I don't sound like Kaz Potowski-ish, but like.
Don't you get involved with everybody,
everybody. Because you're a Bills fan, and y'all, beat my company.
Brown first.
But seriously, you'd be surprised how fast 10 to 13 years goes in the course of not just life, but in government work. Like, I've been on council, I was 29. Now I'm 44 on Saturday. Right? No, so seriously, like, that time flies by.
He's not in that 40 under 40.
Yeah, so I mean, so I said that to say, we've always said, well, 10 years and 10 years or 15 years. That gets here real fast, Jimmy. You've been around on council
10 years?
10 years. You know what I mean? That time goes by. And we're, to Ed's point, we're doing the hurt, if we move forward in certain ways we are now, or seem to be moving, we put it here. We don't fix it, but we fix what's broken. And then the broken piece, fixing it then allows it to work itself out in the long run. If you understand what I'm saying. So we have.
Give it
this
a
is what we have
shot,
to
give it a chance to heal,
do. You have, yeah, well,
right?
absolutely.
I
What-
have to get going though, are we changing anything? Is anything changing?
I'm
I mean,
thinking-
if you're changing anything, but, Paul, I just did have one question for the finance meetings for 2020. Is there anything that, the monthly meetings, is there anything you would recommend, not, maybe not tonight, but later on, to keep us on track?
You
Is
know-
there any way you would like to do things differently in 2020?
You must have, Teresa and I have been talking about this for a month or 2 months. You hit the nail on the head. I think in order to help everybody, if 1 month I could bring down Connie and Brian, the next month David and Chuck could come down and talk. I think instead of me droning on and on about the monthly blue book, which everybody's looking at online anyways, we could.
Oh, we study it.
I know. We could be a little more
You don't?
proactive in
and
having
It
department
would
heads.
be more of a training exercise for
Yes.
us. We're gonna have new people on
Yeah,
board.
absolutely.
Okay,
Liz,
that's
yeah.
good to know.
I mean, Teresa and I was gonna bring that to everybody at the beginning of the year, and
I think
thanks
that's a
for bringing
really
it
good
up.
thing, and I know,
Yeah.
just going up to your office last time, even though we were talking about the water, and then Teresa and I talked afterwards, just that little nugget of information you gave me was helpful. So, that's really, really good to know. I'm sorry, I gotta go. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Do we have to wear anything special? So when people come in and start throwing stuff at us? Hats,
Well-
scarves?
I'm wearing my
Yeah.
Tottenham, I'm wearing my Tottenham shirt tomorrow.
You're wearing your what?
Tottenham shirt.
So this is
Hey,
where we're
listen.
at.
But,
Well, the assumption changes are, that's in there, that they voted on, that's
Yeah.
what it was based on.
We're gonna have to change the millage rate a hair,
I'll go around.
I'll come over there with you.
take the amount out. What? Yeah, I'll get the right number. It's gonna be like 1.47, so it's not 1.45. Because we're taking out,
I'll say 1.4.
I can't do it. Yes, we're taking the 200,000 out.
All right, so let me just do that right now.
I don't know.
We need to apply.
I can't afford it.
No, that's not gonna be here.
So
That's
it's,
why I think.
this is me, right here. You remember that? May not even have a business next year, who knows?
So we're gonna charge $2 more.
It's all this more, like, they're already down to $7.
Understood. No, but that's the desire.
I've been saying that, but I've been blocking it out.
10 years. Thank you, Mr. Finance.
Yeah, please.
I just done it now.
Where would we, Ed should take over. Where would we be?
He's too, you're too high end, I don't understand. I just, summarize.
Not in this position.
I gotta wait for Claire.
In this position. That's about it. Climb up a tree.
With a machete. Coconut tree.
Oh, coconut.
That's right.
Chop off the top.
I mean, if they're not ready, if they,
See him. Curtis, I'll see you. Teresa, I'll see you.
Yeah, I'm not coming